To the aliens, Jack was just a primitive janitor with a dirty wrench. They laughed at his kinetic gun. They mocked his lack of technology. But when the lights went out and the monsters came aboard, Jack didn't need a computer to aim. He just needed to reload. This is the story of how one human with a primitive gun saved the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. The Grand Armada moved through deep space like a river of light. There were 10,000 ships. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien technology. They were white, shiny, and perfectly silent. The engines did not roar, they hummed with pure energy. The creatures who built these ships called themselves the Galactics. They were tall, thin, and elegant. They loved computers, lasers, and energy shields. To them, physical work was something from the ancient past. Why lift a heavy box when a gravity beam can do it? Why turn a screw when a laser can weld it? On the biggest ship, the flagship named Star of Wisdom, everything was perfect. The floors were spotless. The air smelled like ozone and flowers. The crew floated through the hallways in anti-gravity suits. But there was one thing on the Star of Wisdom that was not perfect. His name was Jack. Jack was a human. He was the only human in the entire fleet. Compared to the tall, graceful Galactics, Jack looked short and thick. He did not float. He walked. Thud, thud, thud. His heavy magnetic boots clamped onto the metal floor with every step. The sound echoed in the quiet hallways, annoying the alien crew. Jack wore a dirty blue jumpsuit with pockets full of grease. On his belt, he did not carry a laser scanner or a datapad. He carried a heavy iron wrench, a hammer, and a roll of gray duct tape. Admiral Kale, the commander of the Armada, watched Jack walk by. The Admiral frowned. His large black eyes narrowed. "Human," the Admiral said. His voice was smooth and digital, translated by a computer on his neck. Jack stopped. He wiped oil from his hands onto his pants. "Yes, Admiral." "Please walk softer," the Admiral said. "Your heavy feet disturb the harmony of the ship. Also, you are dripping chemical fluid on my clean floor." "It's called oil, sir," Jack said. "I was fixing the backup airlock. The electronic motor burned out. I had to grease the gears manually." The Admiral looked disgusted. "Manually? You touched the gears with your hands. Why did you not simply command the repair bot?" "The bot is broken, sir. It ran out of battery," Jack replied calmly. The Admiral shook his head. "You humans are so messy. You rely on friction and fire and solid matter. It is primitive. I do not know why the Galactic Council insisted we bring a human on board as part of the diversity program. You are useless here, Jack. Our ships run on pure light and math." Jack did not get angry. He was used to this. "Math breaks sometimes, Admiral. Iron doesn't." Jack continued his walk to his quarters. His room was in the bottom of the ship, near the garbage chutes. It was the only place where he was allowed to make noise. Inside his small room, Jack did something that would have terrified the Admiral. He pulled a black case from under his bed. He opened it. Inside was a rifle. It was not a smooth, white laser gun. It was ugly, black, and made of stamped steel. It was an old-fashioned assault rifle. It fired solid metal bullets using chemical explosions. To the Galactics, this weapon was a horror. It was loud, dirty, and heavy. They called it a slug thrower. They thought it was a barbarian tool. Jack sat on his bunk. He took a rag and began to clean the rifle. He checked the springs. He checked the barrel. He loaded a magazine with 30 heavy brass bullets. Click-clack. The sound was sharp and mechanical. His neighbor, a slender alien scientist named Xylos, walked past the open door. Xylos peeked in and saw the gun. Xylos covered his ears. Jack! Xylos squeaked. Why do you clean that thing? It is obsolete. A plasma pistol has infinite ammo as long as the ship has power. That thing runs out of bullets. It is heavy. It is inaccurate. Why do you keep it? Jack looked up. His eyes were tired but sharp. I keep it because it's simple, Xylos, Jack said. Simple is bad, Xylos argued. Complex is good. Complexity means civilization. Maybe, Jack said. He put the rifle back in the case. But look at this ship. Everything is connected. The guns need the computer. The computer needs the reactor. The reactor needs the shields. If one thing breaks, everything breaks. Jack patted the metal case. This gun doesn't need a computer. It doesn't need a reactor. It doesn't need Wi-Fi or batteries. If I pull the trigger, it bangs. Every single time. Xylos laughed. It was a high, musical sound. You are funny, human. You worry about problems that do not exist. The Grand Armada is invincible. Our shields can stop asteroids. Our lasers can burn stars. We do not need your metal slugs. I hope you're right, Jack mumbled as Xylos floated away. Jack lay down on his bunk. The ship hummed around him. He felt the vibration of the massive engines. It felt powerful. It felt safe. But Jack had a bad feeling in his gut. Humans had an instinct that aliens did not possess. Humans could feel when a storm was coming. Jack closed his eyes, but he kept one hand near his rifle case. The admiral called him useless. The crew called him a primitive janitor. But Jack knew the truth about the universe: technology is great, until the lights go out. And in the deep, dark void of space, the lights always go out eventually. 3 days later, the Star of Wisdom entered the dark sector. This was a part of space where there were no stars, only thick, purple clouds of gas. On the bridge, Admiral Kale stood proudly. The massive screen showed the emptiness of space. The ship sensors were scanning everything. Report, Kale ordered. Nothing, Admiral, said the tactical officer, a blue-skinned alien named Vex. The sensors detect 0 electronic signals. There is no life here. Just dust. Good, Kale said. We will pass through quickly. But the sensors were wrong. The sensors were designed to find technology. They looked for heat, electricity, and radio waves. They were not looking for rocks that were alive. Suddenly, a red light flashed on the console. Admiral! Vex shouted. Contact! Something is emerging from the gas clouds. Out of the purple fog, they appeared. They were not spaceships made of metal. They looked like jagged, floating mountains. They were made of dark, sharp crystal. They did not have engines or exhaust pipes. They moved silently, drifting toward the Armada like hungry sharks. Identify them, Kale ordered. Unknown species, the computer voice said. No technology detected. They are biological. Space monsters. Kale laughed. How primitive. Tactical officer, fire a warning shot. Use the phase laser at 10% power. Scare them away. Vex pressed a smooth glass button. A beam of bright blue energy shot out from the Star of Wisdom. It traveled at the speed of light and hit the lead crystal ship. Usually, a laser like that would melt metal. But when the beam hit the dark crystal, something strange happened. There was no explosion. There was no fire. Instead, the crystal glowed. It turned from black to bright blue. It absorbed the laser beam completely. Admiral! Vex whispered. The target did not take damage. Its energy reading just went up. It ate the laser. The crystal ship pulsated. It seemed to grow larger. It was stronger now. Impossible, Kale stammered. Increase power. Fire full broadside. Destroy them. The entire armada opened fire. Thousands of beams of plasma, lasers, and ion particles lit up the dark space. It was a beautiful light show. The energy hitting the enemy was enough to destroy a planet. But the enemy did not die. The Void Eaters, that is what they were, swarmed forward. They opened their jagged mouths and drank the energy. They glowed brighter and brighter. The more the aliens shot them, the faster the enemy moved. Stop firing. Kale screamed. You are feeding them. But it was too late. The Void Eaters were now supercharged. They flew straight toward the armada. They did not shoot back. They did not need guns. One of the crystal ships slammed into the Star of Wisdom. It crashed right into the ship's energy shield. Normally, the shield stopped everything. But the shield was made of pure energy. The Void Eater latched onto the shield like a leech. It began to drain the shield. The lights on the bridge flickered. Shield integrity dropping. Vex yelled. 80%. 50%. 10%. They are draining the main reactor. Switch to backup batteries. Kale ordered. It's no use. They are eating the electricity directly from the hull. Panic took over the bridge. The Galactics were not soldiers, they were technicians. They relied on their machines. When the machines failed, they fell apart. Computer, calculate a solution. Kale shouted. Solution not found, the computer replied. Enemy is immune to energy weapons. Probability of survival, 0. Then, everything went black. The main reactor died. The artificial gravity failed for a second, then the emergency gravity kicked in. The hum of the engine stopped. The beautiful, silent ship became a metal coffin. The air recyclers stopped pumping. The sliding automatic doors froze shut. The Admiral stood in the dark. The only light came from the glowing red eyes of the Void Eaters outside the window. They were clamping onto the hull, breaking through the metal to get inside. Deep in the bowels of the ship, Jack was sleeping. He woke up when his fan turned off. The air in his room suddenly became still. The light on his ceiling went out. Power failure, Jack muttered. He sat up in the pitch black. Most of the aliens on the ship were blind in the dark. Their eyes evolved for bright star systems. But Jack was human. His eyes adjusted. He could see the shapes of his room. He did not scream. He did not ask the computer for help. Jack reached under his bunk and pulled out a plastic stick. He cracked it. Snap. A bright yellow chemical light filled the room. It was a glow stick. No batteries. No electricity. Just chemistry. He walked to his door. It was locked electronically. It wouldn't open. Stupid smart doors, Jack grunted. He picked up his heavy iron crowbar. He jammed it into the crack of the door. He used his shoulder. He pushed. He grunted. With a loud scrach of metal, he forced the door open. In the hallway, aliens were floating and crying. They were terrified of the dark. They bumped into walls. Help. The computer is dead, one of them wailed. Jack ignored them. He walked back into his room. He opened the black case. He took out the heavy rifle. He strapped it to his chest. Then, he filled his pockets with heavy, brass magazines. He put on his hard hat helmet. He turned on the flashlight taped to the side of his gun. The beam of light cut through the darkness. Okay, Jack said to himself. The fancy toys are broken. Time to do some real work. He racked the slide of his rifle. Clack-clack. Up on the bridge, the admiral heard a terrible sound. The sound of glass breaking. The Void Eaters had smashed through the window. They were entering the ship. The bridge of the Star of Wisdom was usually the safest place in the fleet. Now, it was a nightmare. The emergency lights flickered and died. The only light came from the Void Eaters. 3 of them had smashed through the thick glass of the observation window. They were terrifying up close. They looked like spiders made of black diamonds. They had no eyes, only sensing organs that glowed with a hungry purple light. Their bodies made a sound like broken glass grinding together, krr krr krr. Admiral Kale scrambled backward. He crawled over his expensive command chair. He was trembling. Security! Kale screamed. Defend the bridge! 2 security guards stepped forward. They were brave, but they were confused. They held their sleek, white plasma rifles. They aimed at the lead monster. 2 beams of hot plasma hit the creature. It did not hurt the monster. Instead, the creature seemed to inhale the energy. The plasma washed over its crystal body, and instantly, the creature grew larger. Its sharp legs became longer. It moved faster. With a swipe of a jagged claw, the monster knocked the guards aside. Their armor sparked and failed. They slid across the floor, unconscious. Do not shoot! Vex yelled from the tactical station. The weapons make them stronger. Then what do we do? The admiral cried. Computer. Activate anti-intruder force fields. The computer did not answer. The computer was dead. The bridge crew huddled together in the corner. There were 12 of them. They were the smartest minds in the galaxy. They knew astrophysics, quantum mechanics, and hyperspace theory. But right now, in the dark, they were helpless children. The Void Eaters sensed the fear. They also sensed the small batteries in the crew's suits. They clicked their claws and moved closer, ready to feed. The air was getting cold. The life support systems were off. The silence was heavy. The only sound was the clack-clack-clack of the crystal monsters walking on the metal floor. Admiral Kale closed his eyes. This was the end. The Grand Armada would die here, drifting in the dark. He waited for the pain. Then, he heard a sound. It was not a laser. It was not a beep. It was a heavy, rhythmic thud, thud, thud. It was the sound of magnetic boots walking on the wall. The door to the bridge was sealed shut without power. But suddenly, the manual wheel on the door began to spin. Squeak. Groan. Someone was turning it by hand. It took great strength. With a loud clang, the door slid open just a few inches. A pair of gloved hands gripped the metal. With a grunt of effort, the doors were forced apart. A figure stepped onto the bridge. The figure did not have a glowing energy suit. It wore dark, greasy coveralls. Who is there? Kale whispered. The figure did not answer immediately. Instead, the figure reached into a pocket and pulled out a red stick. He struck the top of it against his helmet. A bright, violent red flame erupted from the stick. It was a chemical flare. The aliens screamed and covered their eyes. To them, fire was dangerous. It was uncontrolled. It was primitive. Smoke filled the clean air of the bridge. The smell of burning sulfur made the admiral cough. In the red flickering light, they saw him. It was Jack. He held the flare high in his left hand. The red light cast long, dancing shadows on the walls. He looked like a demon from an ancient myth. In his right hand, he held the ugly, black rifle. You. Kale gasped. The human. Jack looked around the room. He saw the terrified crew. He saw the 3 Void Eaters standing near the broken window. The monsters paused. They were confused. The flare was giving off heat and light, but it wasn't energy. It was a chemical reaction. They couldn't eat fire. They chattered at each other, their crystal bodies clicking. "Stay back," Jack said. His voice was calm. It was the only calm thing on the ship. "Jack!" Vex shouted. "Run! Our weapons are useless. They absorb energy." "I know," Jack said. He stepped forward, placing himself between the Admiral and the monsters. "Good thing I don't use energy." Jack jammed the burning flare into a crack in the floor. The red light pulsed, illuminating the monsters. Jack grabbed his rifle with both hands. He pulled the stock tight against his shoulder. He did not use a computer targeting system. He just looked down the iron sights. He closed one eye. The lead Void Eater shrieked. It sensed that this new creature was different. It didn't smell like electricity. It smelled like meat and iron. The monster crouched, ready to jump at Jack. "You called me useless, Admiral," Jack said, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Jack, don't," the Admiral begged. "You will just make it angry." Jack ignored him. He took a deep breath and held it. "Cover your ears," Jack warned. "This is going to get loud." The monster leaped through the air, its crystal claws aiming for Jack's throat. Jack squeezed the trigger. The sound was not a pew-pew of a laser. It was a thunderclap. It was the sound of an explosion happening inside a small metal tube. In the confined space of the bridge, the noise was deafening. The aliens screamed and covered their ears. Their sensitive hearing was not built for explosions. But the result was undeniable. The bullet, a heavy piece of lead and copper, flew faster than sound. It slammed into the center of the jumping Void Eater. If it had been a laser, the monster would have eaten it. But this was not energy. This was mass. This was physics. The bullet hit the brittle black crystal. Crack. The force of the impact shattered the creature's chest. Shards of black glass flew everywhere. The monster did not grow bigger. It did not glow. It simply broke apart. The creature lost its momentum. It fell out of the air and crashed onto the metal floor at Jack's feet. It twitched once, then died. It was just a pile of broken rocks now. The bridge went silent, except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Admiral Kale slowly lowered his hands. He stared at the dead monster. He stared at the smoking barrel of Jack's rifle. It died," Kale whispered. "You killed it with a rock." "It's a bullet, sir," Jack said. "Physics always wins." But there was no time to celebrate. The other two Void Eaters screeched. They saw their leader die, and they became furious. They charged at Jack together, their sharp legs clicking rapidly on the floor. "Get back!" Jack shouted to the crew. Jack shifted his stance. He pulled the trigger again. Bang bang bang. 3 shots. 3 flashes of fire from the end of the gun. Hot brass shell casings flew out of the side of the rifle. They clattered onto the clean, white floor. Tink, tink, tink. The second monster exploded into dust. The bullets tore through its legs and head. It collapsed into a heap of crystal dust. But the third monster was fast. It zigzagged. It dodged Jack's aim. It leaped over a console and landed right in front of Jack. It raised a razor-sharp claw to slice Jack's head off. Jack ran out of ammo in his magazine. Click. "Jack!" Vex screamed. "Look out!" The aliens watched in horror. They expected Jack to die. A galactic soldier would have surrendered. A galactic soldier was weak without a powered suit. But Jack was a human. Humans evolved on a high-gravity death world. Jack did not retreat. He let go of the rifle with one hand and grabbed the barrel. He swung the heavy steel gun like a baseball bat. The butt of the rifle smashed into the monster's face. The crystal cracked. The monster stumbled back, stunned by the brute force. Jack didn't stop. He kicked the monster in its chest with his heavy magnetic boot. Thud. The kick was powerful enough to dent a steel door. The monster flew backward and crashed into the wall. Before it could stand up, Jack grabbed a fresh magazine from his belt. He slammed it into the gun. Clack. He racked the slide. The third monster shattered. Silence returned to the bridge. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder. It smelled like sulfur and burning. To the aliens, it was the smell of a factory, but to Jack, it was the smell of victory. Jack breathed heavily. "Bridge clear," he said. He looked around. The Admiral was shaking. The crew looked at Jack with wide, terrified eyes. They looked at him like he was a monster, too. "You are violent," Vex said, trembling. "You fought it with your hands. You used explosions." "I did what I had to do," Jack said. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Are there more?" As if to answer him, a loud screech came from the hallway. "The sensors are down," Vex said, checking his wrist computer. "But I hear them. There are dozens of them. They are swarming the corridors. They are heading for the engine room. If they eat the main core, the ship will explode." Jack frowned. "I can't shoot them all one by one. I don't have enough bullets." Jack reached into his deep pocket and pulled out a round, green metal ball. It had a pin on it. "What is that?" the Admiral asked fearfully. "Is that another kinetic device?" "This," Jack said, "is a fragmentation grenade. It's basically a can of boom." "Boom?" the Admiral asked. "Chemical explosive mixed with metal shrapnel," Jack explained. "No energy. Just shockwaves and sharp metal." Jack walked to the open door of the bridge. He could hear the clicking sounds of the enemy swarm coming down the hall. "Fire in the hole!" Jack yelled. The aliens did not know what that meant, but they saw Jack pull the pin and throw the ball into the dark hallway. "Close the door!" Jack shouted. He grabbed the manual wheel and spun it hard. The heavy door slammed shut just as the floor shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The sound was muffled by the thick door, but the vibration was powerful. Outside, in the hall, the blast wave shattered the crystal bodies of 20 Void Eaters instantly. The shrapnel shredded them. Jack put his ear to the door. He listened. Silence. "That got M," Jack said. He turned back to the Admiral. The Admiral was staring at the brass casings on the floor, then at the dead monsters, and finally at Jack. "You saved us," the Admiral said slowly. "My lasers did nothing. Your metal slugs destroyed them." "We aren't safe yet," Jack said seriously. He reloaded his rifle. "We just cleared the bridge. But the ship is still dead in the water. No power means no life support. We have about 2 hours of air left." "The reactor is offline," Vex said hopelessly. "The electronic starter is fried. We cannot restart the engines." Jack adjusted his helmet. He looked determined. "The electronic starter is broken," Jack agreed. "But every engine has a manual override. If you know where to look." "That valve hasn't been turned in 100 years, Kale said. "It is rusted shut. No species is strong enough to turn it." Jack cracked his knuckles. A small smile appeared on his dirty face. "Good thing I brought my wrench," Jack said. "Admiral, hold the fort. I'm going to jumpstart this spaceship." Jack ran through the dark hallways of the Star of Wisdom. The ship was dying. The air was getting thin and cold. Without power, the heating systems had shut down. The alien crew members were floating in the corridors, huddled together for warmth. They looked like ghosts in the dim light of Jack's flashlight. They were too weak to move. Their thin bodies were not built for cold. "Hold on," Jack whispered to them as he passed. "I'm going to turn the heater back on." He reached the heavy blast doors of the engine room. Usually, these doors opened with a voice command. Now, they were dead metal. Jack didn't have time to be gentle. He used a small explosive charge, a piece of detonator putty, on the lock. Bang! The lock melted. Jack kicked the door open and stepped inside. The engine room was massive. It looked like a cathedral made of glass and chrome. In the center stood the core. It was a giant pillar that usually glowed with the power of a small sun. Now, it was dark and silent. The engineering team was sitting on the floor, weeping. The chief engineer, a tall alien with long, delicate fingers, looked up. "It is over," the chief said. "The electronic starter is fused. The spark plugs are dead. We cannot ignite the reaction." Jack walked past him. He walked straight to the base of the core. "Electronics are fried," Jack said, looking at the blackened control panel. "So we do it the old-fashioned way." He pointed to a large, red wheel on the side of the machine. It was made of solid iron. It was covered in dust. It looked like a valve from an old submarine. Above it, a sign read, "Emergency Manual Primer, do not touch." The chief engineer gasped. "You cannot touch that. That is the mechanical override. It was installed 500 years ago as a safety law. It has never been used. It requires 5,000 newtons of force to turn. Only a hydraulic machine can move it." "I don't have a hydraulic machine," Jack said. He slung his rifle over his back. "I have a breakfast of eggs and bacon, and I have adrenaline." Jack spat on his gloves and rubbed them together. He grabbed the cold iron wheel. He tried to turn it. It did not move. It was rusted solid. "See," the chief said sadly. "It is impossible. Physics says no." "Physics," Jack grunted, "can shut up." Jack opened his tool belt. He took out his heavy steel wrench. He jammed the wrench into the spokes of the wheel to create a lever. Then, he found a long metal pipe on the floor and slid it over the wrench handle. This made the lever longer. "Simple mechanics," Jack muttered. "Give me a lever long enough, and I can move the world." He grabbed the end of the pipe. He planted his magnetic boots firmly on the floor. He took a deep breath. Jack pulled. The muscles in his arms bulged. His neck veins popped out. His face turned red. The aliens watched in horror. They had never seen a living being exert so much physical force. To them, biology was fragile. If they tried this, their bones would snap. A loud, grinding sound echoed through the silent room. The rust was breaking. He is moving it," one engineer whispered. Jack roared again. He put his entire body weight into the pull. He channeled every bit of human stubbornness he had. He thought about Earth. He thought about his paycheck. He thought about not dying in the cold dark. The wheel turned one full rotation. Inside the massive engine, a heavy hammer dropped. It struck a flint. It was a primitive, mechanical spark. A small flame appeared inside the core. It was just a pilot light. One more. Jack yelled to himself. "Spin the turbine." He grabbed the wheel again. Now that it was loose, he had to spin it fast to pump the fuel. He grabbed the iron rim with his bare hands. He spun it. Heave. Spin. Heave. Spin. He was a human dynamo. Sweat poured down his face. His heart hammered in his chest like a drum. "Come on, you piece of junk!" Jack shouted at the glorious alien technology. The wheel spun faster. Whir whir whir. Deep inside the core, the fuel pumps woke up. They caught the flame. Suddenly, a low thrumming sound filled the room. The floor began to vibrate. The dark pillar in the center flickered. Then, boom! The core ignited. A blinding beam of white light shot up the pillar. The hum turned into a roar. The lights in the room flickered on. The air vents blasted warm air. The gravity stabilizers kicked in, making everyone feel heavy again. Power restored, the computer voice announced. It sounded cheerful. The alien engineers shielded their eyes from the bright light. They looked at the machine, then they looked at Jack. Jack let go of the wheel. He collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. His arms felt like jelly. His hands were shaking. The chief engineer floated over to him. He looked at Jack with a mix of fear and worship. "You." The chief stammered. "You jump-started a warp core, by hand?" Jack sat up. He wiped the grease and sweat from his face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar. He took a bite. "Just needed a little push," Jack said while chewing. "Now, did the guns come back online?" "Yes," the chief said. "But the energy weapons are still useless against the Void Eaters." "I know," Jack said. He stood up, groaning as his sore muscles protested. He picked up his rifle again. "But the ship has power now. That means the big toys are working." "What big toys?" the chief asked. Jack grinned. It was a scary grin. "The asteroid deflector cannon," Jack said. "It shoots solid tungsten rocks the size of a bus. The Admiral never uses it because it's messy. But today, messy is exactly what we need." Jack tapped his radio headset. "Admiral, this is Jack. I just paid the electric bill. Power is back. Requesting permission to take manual control of the main cannon." Static crackled, and then the Admiral's voice came through. It sounded relieved. "Permission granted, Jack. Save us." Jack sat in a gunnery chair. It was a dusty, forgotten seat located in a bubble at the bottom of the ship. The Galactics never used this chair. They let the computer aim their weapons. But the computer was confused by the erratic movements of the Void Eaters. It tried to calculate trajectories, but the math was too slow. "Computer," Jack said into his headset. "Give me manual control of the mass driver cannon." "Warning," the computer replied. "Manual aim is inaccurate. Human error is probable." "Just give it to me," Jack growled. A heavy joystick rose from the floor. Jack grabbed it. It vibrated in his hands. On the screen, he saw the enemy swarm. They were buzzing around a massive shape in the distance. It was the Mother Crystal. It was the size of a moon. It pulsated with a dark, hungry purple light. It was preparing to swallow the Star of Wisdom whole. "Target locked," Jack whispered. This weapon was not a laser. It was a railgun. It used powerful magnets to shoot a solid slug of tungsten, a metal that was incredibly heavy and hard. The slug weighed 20 tons. "Admiral," Jack said over the comms. "You might want to hold on to something. This has a bit of a kick." "A kick?" the Admiral asked. "What is a?" Jack pulled the trigger. The sound was not heard, it was felt. The entire flagship shuddered. The recoil was so strong that the artificial gravity wavered for a second. The aliens on the bridge were knocked off their feet. From the bottom of the ship, a streak of fire shot out. It wasn't a beam of light. It was a blur of superheated metal moving at a fraction of the speed of light. Physics took over. The tungsten slug crossed the distance in a heartbeat. It slammed into the center of the Mother Crystal. There was no absorption this time. You cannot absorb a 20-ton rock moving that fast. The sound of the impact vibrated through the vacuum of space, detected by the ship's hull sensors. The mother crystal did not explode in a ball of fire, it shattered like a dropped vase. Millions of tons of black crystal flew into space. The center of the enemy ship simply ceased to exist. With the mother dead, the swarm panicked. The smaller void eaters screeched on the radio frequencies. Without their queen to guide them, they were mindless animals. They turned around and fled into the dark gas clouds, running away from the scary ship that threw rocks. "Target destroyed," Jack said calmly. He let go of the joystick. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Returning to bridge. An hour later, the Star of Wisdom was quiet. The lights were back on. The air was warm. The Admiral stood on the bridge. He looked perfect again. His uniform was clean, and his posture was elegant. But something had changed in his eyes. He was no longer looking at his computer screens. He was looking at the door. The door opened. Jack walked in. Jack looked terrible. He was covered in black grease from the engine room. He had monster blood on his boots. His jumpsuit was torn. He smelled like sweat, oil, and gunpowder. Usually, the Admiral would have ordered him to leave the clean bridge immediately. Instead, the Admiral stepped forward. The entire bridge crew, the scientists, the tacticians, the pilots, stood up. They did not speak. They simply bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind usually reserved for galactic kings. "Jack," the Admiral said. His voice was filled with respect. "We are alive." "Yeah," Jack said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "That was a close one." "We have studied the battle data," the Admiral continued. "Our energy weapons were fuel for the enemy. Our logic circuits failed. The only thing that saved the Grand Armada was, you." The Admiral gestured to the screen. It showed a replay of Jack turning the rusty valve. It showed Jack shooting the monsters with his slug thrower. "We called you primitive," the Admiral said, lowering his head in shame. "We thought your reliance on solid matter and manual labor was a weakness. We were wrong. It is a strength." Jack shrugged. He pulled a crumpled pack of protein snacks from his pocket. He was starving. "Look, Admiral," Jack said, opening the wrapper. "Technology is great. I love the warp drive. I love the food replicator. But the universe is a rough place. Sometimes, you don't need a supercomputer. Sometimes, you just need a rock and the will to throw it." The Admiral nodded seriously. "A rock." "Yes. A very fast rock." The Admiral turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the Galactic Council. Priority 1. "Yes, Admiral." "What is the message?" "New Fleet Order 99, the Admiral declared. Effective immediately. Every ship in the Grand Armada must be retrofitted." "Retrofitted with what, sir?" "Better shields. Faster engines." "No," the Admiral said, looking at Jack. "Every ship must have a kinetic railgun. Every ship must have a manual emergency override." The Admiral paused, and a small, rare smile touched his alien lips. "And most importantly," the Admiral said, "every ship must have one human. And he must be allowed to carry his primitive rifle wherever he wants." Jack chewed his snack and smiled. "Does that mean I get a raise?" "Jack," the Admiral said, "you can have the whole planet."